Hi, my name's Jaime. I'm an Aboriginal peer support worker at Headspace, Adelaide. I'd like to acknowledge that the land we operate from and are meeting on right now is the land of the Kaurna people. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present and future, and acknowledge Headspace's commitment to making a positive contribution to young people who are Aboriginal.
Hi everybody, welcome back to Season 5, Episode 3 of Headspace Sessions podcast Adelaide. My name is Ali and I am the host for this season, and I am joined by two wonderful co-hosts, one that is hopefully familiar to you by now and another new face on our podcast. Shall we introduce ourselves?
I guess I'm the new face. My name's Benjamin. You might remember me if you've listened to Season 4 of the Sessions podcast. I was a guest a couple of times, but I'm here in a bit of a more proper capacity now.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Hi everyone, I'm Santi. Glad to be back.
Yeah, glad to have you back. We are so excited to tackle this episode today as it's a really important one. But we also just want to thank you for all of the love and support that you guys have given us so far, especially on our last episode. I thought that was a really vulnerable and important message for us to talk about. And yeah, we've had some really wonderful conversations from that episode. So keep tuning in, keep leaving comments. I know Jaime and Beth got some happy birthday comments last time. So if you ever have anything on your mind following these episodes, definitely leave it in the comments or DM us on any of our social media and we can get back to you. But we are, really keen on jumping into today's episode, which is all about cultural identity. So thank you so much, as always, to Jaime and Adam, who are behind the scenes writing these scripts for us. They are young people themselves, so we think that's really important in how we approach these conversations and keep ensuring that they are relatable to young people today in our community. Also, as always, Jaime has provided us with a very fun icebreaker to get into today's conversation. She has posed the very important question to us. She has asked us, what's a food from your culture that you could eat every single day? Are we going to the extreme of saying like this is the only food that you're ever eating for the rest of your life? Or are we just kind of like you can eat other things, but this is something you have to eat every day? How extreme are we going with this?
I can go extreme.
Okay, let's go extreme.
All right.
What food are we eating every single day from our culture?
For me, it's like, it's not even thinking. I'm really, really into my iced coffee.
Yeah.
I love my iced coffee. And I think, that's a very like South Aussie thing. I don't remember when the stat was from, but there was at least a point where they took a survey of the most consumed beverages in the world, and most of places in the world it's Coca-Cola, and then SA it was Farmers Union iced coffee instead.
I'm not even surprised.
Yeah.
How many in a normal day would you consume?
I limit myself to like, one regular sort of carton. I used to be a maniac about it, but I'm keeping my health in mind. So yeah.
Very admirable.
Yeah.
Mine's a toughie because there's a lot that I can go into, but I'd say kottu, which is a Sri Lankan staple. It's chopped up roti with like stir-fried vegetables and whatever you want, and meat, whatever you want. It's really tasty.
Amazing.
Yum.
Do you need that breakfast, lunch and dinner? And Ben's just over here with his iced coffee.
Yeah.
You said extreme, so do you realize you're going to be consuming iced coffee for every single meal of the rest of your life?
Yeah, I'm someone that doesn't do my morning routine very well in terms of drawing it out. I'm very quick in my morning routine. So iced coffees are generally like my breakfast equivalent. So I'm on the go.
Yeah.
I can chug my iced coffee.
Yeah.
And it's because of the taste. It's not like the classic, like I can't do anything without my caffeine. Like I just love the taste. I don't know. Yeah.
No, I love that. I would say I'm, one of those fiends for Vegemite. So I'm just going the classic, like Vegemite, but it has to be specifically like the white sourdough loaf from Baker's Delight, and it has to be fresh bread. Yeah. Like I don't want that 2-day-old, 3-day-old bread off the supermarket. I want a fresh white loaf with a slab of butter and a slab of Vegemite. And you can have that multiple ways. You can have it fresh, you can have it toasted. I'm not complaining, and I probably won't for the rest of my life if that was what I was eating. So I love what we brought to the table.
Mhm.
And I think that leads really nicely into our conversation today. So, as I mentioned, we're talking about cultural identity and what that means for us. We know that for many young people, especially living in Australia, cultural identity can be a really important part of someone's well-being, especially their mental well-being. You might be born here in Australia, or maybe your journey is from somewhere halfway across the world and you've experienced a lot in your life that has shaped who you are today. And I think that's what we really want to highlight on what that means to somebody and how that can shape their perspective and their kind of everyday life here as a young person in Australia. I also, I guess, just want to acknowledge as a host that, as someone who grew up in Australia, I haven't had the same experiences as multicultural young people have done in Australia. But I know that cultural identity is an incredibly important part of mental health. And that's the point of today's episode, is being able to listen to the stories that we're about to share and highlight that and hopefully provide that platform that young people can speak up about these things, because they are important and they do deserve to have a platform. So I guess with that being said, I'm really intrigued to hear from both you, Ben, and Santi today around what culture means for you both. What is it like for you? Can you talk about your kind of experiences with what culture means to you?
So I'm from Sri Lanka. I'm here as an international student. For me, culture is what I've got with my family, bringing that and keeping that in check, and, staying true to those roots that were instilled onto me since I was small. And, yes, those will change as you try to acclimate to a different country, but certain aspects of your culture, like, following your religion, if that's something.
I love that you've kind of acknowledged that it can change over time and what it means to somebody, but also just acknowledging that it can be very different for people. It's not just like one kind of set definition of what culture means to somebody. Everyone will have their own perception and experience. So yeah, I love that you've highlighted that.
And I think, sort of expanding upon what's already been said, I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge. Like, culture is sort of this umbrella term. And I think the first thing that comes to people's mind generally comes with nationality or ethnicity. But it's like such a prevalent factor across so many levels, and it's almost kind of invisible in our day to day. Santi, you were talking about like family dynamics and, that individual sort of culture within the smaller group there. But I think, especially in this day and age, if you think of young people in particular, there are cultures that exist on the internet and, no one shares the same place, location, even time, but there is one factor that sort of unites them, and that's one element informing a person's culture out of all the other sort of areas at the same time there. And for me, that's just like a really fascinating thing to sort of consider, because I think with culture, sometimes we can make the mistake of sticking people into these very generalized categories rather than sort of acknowledging that wider, expansive element of how many different cultures a person is associated with at the same time. Yeah.
I know. I think that is a really important reflection. And whether you're somebody yourself who, when you think of culture, you kind of think of, what Ben was mentioning around, you have these assumptions of what culture means to you, and maybe you don't feel like you fit into a stereotypical kind of group when it comes to culture, or maybe you don't know what your culture is or where you've come from or what kind of shapes you. But hopefully this episode kind of provides a spotlight on that, and maybe questioning your own perspective and having a think to yourself about, maybe I haven't had to think about it growing up because I fit into the majority, as some would say. But maybe now is my time to think about what culture does mean to me, and those cultures that do exist on the internet and that do shape our beliefs and our values and our experiences. That to start thinking about those. Have you ever felt disconnected from your cultural identity? Have you ever maybe been torn between more than one culture? I think I'm really interested, Santi, you've moved to Australia. So you are navigating in real time two probably very important cultures that exist for you. How do you go about managing those, and do you ever feel disconnected from one or the other?
So with me, it wasn't a really big, it wasn't a really difficult transition from Sri Lankan culture to Australian culture, because growing up, I went to an international school, and my family household was like, it wasn't your typical Sri Lankan household. Yes, we'd have certain elements of Sri Lankan culture in it, but it was more westernized. So transitioning from that to Australian culture wasn't that difficult.
Okay.
But when it comes to the element of disconnection, I think it's more what you feel with the people that surround you when you're back home. And yeah, that's, I think, one of the main things that I've seen a lot of people struggle with from people I've spoken to, is trying to find their place in Australian society. Like, I have a few friends they've been here for 2 years, and they're still struggling to integrate themselves.
Absolutely, yeah.
And usually they are surprised that I am this way when they are struggling as well.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a big question.
Yeah.
And for me, it's not really a big issue.
Yeah. Well, I think that makes sense around you've acknowledged that you came from, as you kind of called it, a very westernized version of maybe your culture back in Sri Lanka, and that wouldn't have been or wasn't the same experiences as maybe your friends or the people that are here around you in Australia at the moment. And, we've highlighted that everyone has such different experiences with that. So, yeah, I think that is an important thing to discuss.
Yeah, I think, and as well, yes, it is a bit difficult to transition, but you've also got to take in mind that you've got to be open up. You've got to open up to new experiences. What I like to say is, if you are struggling with acclimating into another culture, is speak out about it. And, I'm happy to help whoever this asks me about anything, but
just give out Santi's personal details.
But if I do feel disconnected, I usually, meet up with, I've got a school friend from Sri Lanka back here. I usually, meet up with him. We just went for to have Sri Lankan food last week. So it's just those cravings come in, and that's when I feel disconnected. And most of the time, I usually talk to my mom like every single day. So that disconnection is not there.
Yeah. I love that you've got things that you can do if you are feeling disconnected, like, eating foods that remind you of home, and being able to rely on your family during those more challenging times. And I'm not sure, Ben, if you've got anything to add to that.
So you might have to bear with me while I contextualize this. I think for me, my relationship with culture is a very sort of personal, I guess more introspective thing about how I exist in, the society as someone who was born and sort of raised in the dominant culture of the, space in South Australia particularly. Like my grandparents were all migrants from Europe, and my mum was born in Scotland, and I reckon if you picked up their house and plopped it back in Europe, they wouldn't look out of place at all. So there are elements of my childhood there, but I think for me, in terms of disconnection from my culture, you've got that very stereotypical, like true blue Aussie sort of nationalism that some people feel. And I think that's understandable. But for me, I think I constantly have this sense of dissonance between the fact that, I was born here, I've been raised here, I love living here, but there's that element where, I'm born on stolen land. I was born on Ghana land. I was raised on Ghana land. We're recording on Ghana land. And I think, for me, I don't like that idea some people sort of promote of like, well, I wasn't the one that colonized Australia. I wasn't the one that came here. So why is it, something I have to deal with? But I think for me, it's sort of like, even though my grandparents came here in the 20th century, they were nowhere near sort of, 1788 or anything like that. I still actively benefit from what's happened there. And, to this day, I fully benefit from what's going on. And I have that easy sort of almost pathway of growing up as part of that culture. And then at the same time, I'm seeing people who have always lived here, who were also born here, often around the same time as me, and they have a totally different experience because they've been alienated from the cultural space while still residing on their own land. And, they've still got their own culture that's almost shunned from the now current dominant culture. And I think for me, it's almost more about looking at how I'm understanding my surrounding cultural space and how I carry myself within that cultural space, because I think doing that sort of blind, ignorant factor of, Australia is great for me and I love living here because it's good for me and I benefit from a lot of things that only benefit me is a sort of reductive approach to making, good progress in conducting myself. Yeah.
It's a very privileged approach. And I think everything you said, first of all, I want to get that on a t-shirt. Like that should be platformed everywhere. And I think it's such an important reflection that you have, and that I feel deeply aligned with as well as a white woman living in Australia. It is so important that we are not ignorant to our culture and where we come from and the land in which we live on and where we are blessed to be able to record this podcast on. So thank you so much for highlighting that, Ben. I think that highlights and is an important conversation for today around the fact that cultural identity is so important to us, regardless of how much we are aware of it or not. But some of us are able to really understand and embrace that as part of our daily life, whereas some of us may struggle. But I think being able to recognize the importance of it and maybe how it does give us a sense of belonging does kind of help navigate our well-being and maybe how we can look after ourselves and how it can benefit us. So how does feeling connected to our culture affect our mental well-being? If we're looking more so at the mental health side of things, how does having that sense of belonging to our culture and where we're from, how does that make us feel in a positive way?
I've made up the word, but I call myself a statriot where like I feel far more of a connection to South Australia than, necessarily other parts of the country. And I think there are certain smaller elements in South Australia, like, obviously the way we pronounce dance and it's Fritz instead of Devon and it's quilt instead of doona sort of thing. And, the iced coffee culture where it's sort of these smaller things. And I think I feel connected in the sense where while I'm Australian, I'm also part of this smaller system of South Australia where, regardless of your opinion on the outcome of like the referendum, for example, South Australia just sort of went ahead and implemented their own voice to Parliament on a state level. And I'm really proud of that fact because it was something I was quite passionate about, even though it didn't go through nationally. And I think, having that sense of belonging and affiliation means even when circumstances are a bit sort of scary on what the future holds and how things might be going, I think I look at my sort of smaller context or even, as you were saying, Santi, like even within my family context. And it's like, I'm worried about the bigger picture, but things are going all right on the smaller scale for me. Yeah.
It makes you feel safe. It makes you feel like maybe everything isn't as bad as it's meant to seem, like kind of on a global scale, as you mentioned. You feel like maybe you're not the only one thinking these things and it makes you feel less alone. And I think that is a shared experience across many cultures. How about you, Santi?
I think it's really good that there's certain communities. You've got Sri Lankan communities, Indian, whatever.
Yeah.
And even in my workplace, you've got Sri Lankans working in departments all over the store, and it's really good that you can go talk to them and like go back into your native language
Yeah.
and just hash out whatever you want. But I think it's like you said, it's that niche area that we need to focus on.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Almost like the walls come down when you're surrounded
Yeah.
by like-minded people, and whether that's a cultural group or even just a group that you personally like align with, you see that instant kind of positive effect on your mental health and your sense of belonging that I'm sure all of us could relate to in some capacity. And it helps build your confidence and helps build that safety in being able to voice certain opinions and shared
even just
values.
Venting to someone in your own language is totally different to how you would vent in English.
Yeah.
Because it's so Sri Lanka's national language is Sinhalese. Is really expressive. So when you vent, you have got facial expressions, hand expressions. So you're venting with your entire body, and that person's not judging you. So that's because they know what you're saying, and it's just like, okay, cool, we got it. It
makes sense to them.
I think sort of in the context of the bigger picture as well, because obviously we have these really helpful smaller cultural contexts and situations we belong in, but I think in sort of regarding the bigger picture as well, I think I mentioned the internet earlier, I think possibly, and I think that's like such a great medium through which to create that sense of belonging, not just within your own cultures, but I think it really helps with cultural like interconnectivity at the same time, because it's sort of like previously, I think I'd consider Australia to be a really multicultural place. And it's sort of, the fact that you can go out and have any sort of cuisine from around the world you want, and you are basically living in your own backyard still, is a really amazing thing to me. But at the same time, it's sort of like now that the internet's there, everyone's able to interact with each other with such an immediacy where no longer it's like, you're waiting weeks for your carrier pigeon to deliver a letter overseas or something like that. And I think that's this like really cool thing. And I mean, it also means you don't have to use those conventional means of connecting with people to still maintain that feeling of connection and stuff like that. Like, I think fandom culture is probably a really good example, like a bunch of people loving the same things. And I think over the past few decades, you've seen it. It's gone from like, liking this thing is weird and you get shunned in your high school unless you're like that classic stereotypical like jock figure to, doesn't matter if no one in your high school necessarily enjoys the same things you do, because there's an easily accessible group of people who do, that are going to appreciate what you're saying and they're going to like understand what you're saying and they're going to love what you love the same way you do. And I think that's a really like sort of beautiful thing to come out of the digital age with all our sort of concerns about it and whatnot. But that increased connectivity both within cultures and between cultures is a really nice thing to me.
Yeah. I love that there are so many positive reasons that we can reflect on why culture can be important to somebody. And as we know, mental health is never viewed the same anywhere, especially across cultures. What's normal in one culture might not be normal in another, or maybe more misunderstood. And for many young people, especially from multicultural backgrounds and from different cultures, challenges can arise from this difference in views and difference in perspectives. As we know, racism is incredibly prevalent. Discrimination, a lot of cultural misunderstandings can really negatively affect a young person's mental health. And it's really important that there exists culturally safe and inclusive spaces in Australia and on a more local level in Adelaide that can provide supports to these young people to help navigate these challenges. Have you ever, or do you know of anyone personally in your life that has ever avoided seeking help because they were worried about it not fitting in with their cultural values, or there was stigma that was there?
So this goes back to Sri Lanka as well. I'm sorry. I'm just going to stick to Sri Lanka.
Don't apologize. That's your culture. It's your understanding.
Way back. This goes like, I think, forever, but Sri Lankans think of mental health as someone going crazy.
Okay.
Which is sort of like if someone seeks mental health help, essentially they think, okay, you've got something wrong in you.
Yep.
So even if you're dealing with stress, anxiety, it's still like, frowned upon, like, oh my God, this person's off their rockers, something like that.
Okay.
So coming from that culture
Mm.
and seeing that here, it's totally like, it's open. Like
Mm.
people talk about it openly. I mean, I had people at uni as well, just talking about it openly, and it's no one's like, looking down upon it.
Yeah.
And sometimes whenever someone's going through something, they don't want to seek that help.
Yeah.
And they try to like bottle it up.
Yeah.
And that's where burnout comes in, and they just break down.
Yeah.
I myself, like, I burnt out because of uni, assignments, stuff like that. And I went to the student counselor and I was like, I'm just stressing out. It was totally fine. Like, it's normal. But yeah, it's people like South Asian countries are really scared of going to seek mental health because they're scared of what people in their culture will think of them. And it doesn't help when parents look down upon it as well, because like I've seen and heard certain parents shrug the fact that, oh, it's fine, you're just a kid, you've got nothing to worry about, but you don't know what that kid's going through. So but in that sense, my parents were like really open, that if I was going through something, mum would be always there to talk to me about anything, regardless of it being like a really small issue. Like I used to be bullied in school. That took a really big toll on me. And I stopped going to school. I completely did not go for my final semester exams because I was mentally down. And my mom was like, that's fine. Just stay at home. We'd rather have you here in a clean mental health, with a clean mental health, rather than you going there and failing all your exams because of how other people are treating you.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'm really glad to hear that you had a positive experience in your family, and especially over here in Australia when you were approaching your counsellor and you felt validated and normal to have those feelings. And we know that that's not the case for everybody, unfortunately. But there are so many wonderful supports that are out there, especially if you've migrated to Australia and you're seeking some support with your mental health. There are some incredible services that we will link in our episode notes that you can reach out to. Did you have anything, Ben, that you wanted to add finally to this very important topic?
Yeah, honestly, I think I was going to sort of mirror what Santi was already sort of really describing well. I think, what you mentioned earlier about the feeling of venting in your own language versus like if you're a migrant living in Australia, how do you convey certain feelings where translations don't directly align with what you're trying to express in a language that isn't your own sort of mother tongue? And then I guess for me, I think this goes across cultures because it is that smaller side thing of, human productivity and that obsession with productivity. It's like there's a stigma around mental health and getting help for it because it's less of like about helping someone, and it's more that, that's a defect, or it's like a failure to be productive. It's sort of, especially with the pressures of schooling, not only navigating that socially, but in terms of succeeding there, very similar story to Santi's. I had a period where I had lots of sudden change in my life in early high school. And I just really suddenly got so anxious I couldn't even leave my room. And I think the thing that was tough for that is my family, there was this expectation. I go through school, I go do something at uni, and I function and I like contribute to society. And I think having to have that really blunt, awkward conversation with your parents of like, hey, look, I need help. I need help. And you almost have to justify why you need help before you're allowed to get help. Is this really difficult thing to navigate, I think, culturally. Yeah.
It's a lot to have on, especially if you're a young person, on your shoulders to navigate alone. And that can be a really confronting experience. And that's why we're having this important conversation is to highlight that we see that this is happening for a lot of people, and we are here to support you during these times, whether you're ready to take that step in, coming to a headspace center or reaching out to someone directly and having that one-on-one kind of support provided, or if it's just this conversation has highlighted, maybe it's important that I do talk to a friend and kind of share what's going on for me.
Sorry, even if you go and speak to a student council and if they feel, okay, you need extra help, I've had certain people come up to me and say, hey, Headspace is a good place to go to talk to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think also adding to Ben's idea of expectations, that's like a major issue, because coming from South Asian backgrounds, parents, your parents are paying like thousands of dollars to get you to Australia, and then that sort of is on your shoulder.
Absolutely.
And that takes a really big hit on your mental health, because if you fail a topic, that's when it's like, oh my God, okay, parents are going to be happy, and then that's more weight added onto your shoulder. But then when you come from families that don't look into your mental health, that's even worse.
Yeah.
It also doesn't help when certain people have a misunderstanding of mental health, because their assumption is, oh no, it's nothing major. Like, even though I'm dealing with anxiety or I'm stressed, now it'll just fade away. But it doesn't. So that's where I think that stigma needs to just evaporate a bit.
Honestly, I think we could talk about this topic for many more hours. But I think the main message that we've acknowledged is this is not a singular experience that one person has had. If you are listening and you can relate to anything, just know that you're not alone. No matter where you come from and what experiences you've had growing up, I'm sure that everyone has had or can relate to something we've spoken about, and that just highlights that there is somebody out there that can understand what you're going through. So no matter what your cultural background is, support is available to you, and you absolutely don't have to face any challenges alone. Your culture matters, your experiences matter, and there are people and there are resources that are ready to support you when you are ready to take that step. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you guys did today. I think it was a really important start to a conversation that we should be having every single day and encouraging that reflection, no matter who you are. So thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for sharing your experiences and perspectives. And as always, we are so grateful that you are here and providing your opinions on very important topics. So thank you for tuning in to another episode of Headspace Sessions Adelaide podcast. We are really excited to be bringing to you some more episodes in the future, so please stay tuned in no matter where you listen to your podcast. But thank you so much for today's chat, and we hope to see you back soon.